All right, today we're diving deep into the story of a legendary record label. A label that didn't just sell music, it kicked off a full-blown revolution right from a college dorm room. This is the incredible story of the rise and, yeah, the inevitable fall of Def Jam Records. And this is the question, right? This is at the very heart of the whole thing. How in the world did two college kids in a dorm room manage to change music forever? It sounds totally impossible, but it's exactly what went down, and it's the key to understanding how a cultural movement gets born. So let's start at the beginning. Our story kicks off with this little spark in an NYU dorm. It was a totally improbable partnership that was about to set the entire music world on fire. I mean, you couldn't have picked two more different guys. It was a collision of worlds. On one side, you've got Rick Rubin, this punk rock kid who was just obsessed with raw, heavy, loud sounds. He was the sonic architect. And on the other side, Russell Simmons, the super savvy promoter who knew exactly what was happening on the streets. He was the visionary dealmaker. And their mission together, it was radical. They weren't trying to make polished, radio-friendly pop music. No way. Their whole goal was to bottle lightning, to take the raw, unfiltered, gritty energy of street culture and shove it right into the mainstream's face until it had no choice but to listen. And that mission, it led them straight into what we all now call Def Jam's golden age. This is the moment the label goes from a dorm room idea to an absolute cultural juggernaut. And just look at how fast it all happened. In 1984, they find this charismatic teenager from Queens, LL Cool J, and they make him hip-hop's first real solo superstar. Just 1 year later, they unleashed the Beastie Boys, who were mixing punk rock and hip-hop in a way nobody had ever heard before. And by '87, they gave us the political fire of Public Enemy. This wasn't just good A&R. They were practically predicting the future. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? A Def Jam record wasn't just a song you put on. It was an event. It was a statement. Every single release was like a cultural bombshell, designed to shake things up, start a conversation, and just rattle the foundations of the whole system. So, as the label's power just kept growing and growing, the music was really just the beginning. Def Jam was busy building an empire that went way, way beyond the recording studio. Okay, just let that number sink in for a second. Over $100 million in annual revenue. This wasn't some little indie label anymore. This was a financial powerhouse. I mean, that's just proof of how completely they had grabbed the world's attention. And here's how they pulled it off. It wasn't just about selling records. Russell Simmons goes and launches the Fat Farm clothing line, and boom, hip-hop fashion is suddenly mainstream. They create Def Comedy Jam on TV, launching the careers of so many legendary comedians. They started getting into movies, TV production. They weren't in the music business anymore. They were in the business of culture itself. They had totally smashed their original mission. At their absolute peak, Def Jam wasn't following the trends. They were the trends. They were the ones telling you what was cool, what to wear, what to listen to, and what to talk about. But you know how these stories go? When you build an empire that fast, with that much raw energy, eventually the cracks start to show. And the very things that made Def Jam so revolutionary started to become its biggest weaknesses. The fall wasn't one big explosion. It was more like a slow fracture. It really started when Rick Rubin, the sonic genius, decided to leave. Then you get the corporate mergers, which brought in this whole new pressure to focus on quarterly profits instead of taking artistic risks. At the same time, the sound of hip-hop was changing, and the label that wants to find the cutting edge was now struggling to keep up. It was losing that raw, rebellious identity it started with. And all of that led to this massive, fundamental conflict, an identity crisis. I mean, think about it. How can you be the authentic voice of the streets when you're also a division of some giant multinational corporation? That rebellious artist-first spirit that built the whole thing was now in a head-on collision with the commercial machine it had become. But look, the story of Def Jam doesn't just end with its decline. The fall of an empire never erases its creation. We have to talk about the legacy, because the echoes of their revolution, well, we're still hearing them loud and clear today. So why does all this matter? Because Def Jam literally wrote the blueprint for the modern entertainment brand. They took hip-hop from this niche New York scene and launched it onto the global stage, making it the dominant youth culture in the world. They showed everyone how a record label could be this huge, multifaceted brand that fused music, fashion, and media together. Their influence is, well,
It's just undeniable. And that kind of brings us to our final question, our big takeaway. When you look back on it all, what is the ultimate lesson of Jeff Jam? Is it a blueprint for how you build a cultural empire from absolutely nothing? Or is it a cautionary tale about what happens when art slams into commerce, when a revolution becomes a corporation? The more you think about it, the truth is, it's probably both.